Imagine this. It's 1675, minding your own business in Northumberland, Virginia, on your way to church, and you have your limbs cut off by an Indian. Well, that was Robert Henn's morning. It was also the first action that would later kickstart Bacon's rebellion. We will return to Robert Henn's murder. After having the situation explained to them, Captain Brett and Colonel Mason raised 30 men to pursue the suspected Indians into Maryland. They ended up finding two roads, so Brent and Mason split up their forces to travel down the roads. Captain Brent and his men surrounded a cabin that they found while traveling on the path. Captain Brent went up to the cabin to talk with the Indians. Long story short, Brent shot the Indian, causing the other Indians to fire back. Only a few Indians were able to escape after the skirmish. This alerted Mason's team, which pursued some of the Indians that they found. The Indians that were involved in the event were the Susquehannas, which recently were driven away from their homeland. Because of this and the recent conflict with English settlers, they sought the protection of the Piscataway Indians, who had a fort at the head of the Potomac River. After these events, more killings occurred in both the Virginia and Maryland colonies. This caused both colonies to raise 1,000 troops each to help deal with the murder issue. Both of these militias would lay siege to the Piscataway fort. The Indians attempt to send out messengers asking why the English were being hostile, but they were killed. A lot of death has happened, and Bacon hasn't even shown up yet. Anyways, these killings caused the Indians to fight back at the English settlers. Some women and children were able to escape the fighting. The English never took the fort. They only were able to deal with the loose stragglers in the fort once starvation caught up to them. Do you remember those escaped Indians? Well, apparently this caused other Indians to go into Maryland and kill more people. One of these people was Mr. Bacon's overseer, which apparently he really liked. The surrounding communities worried about the continual killings and banded together with Mr. Nathaniel Bacon as their leader to deal with the Indian threat. Before this issue had been made known to the governor, this being Sir William Berkeley, Bacon's cousin. However, he did not fulfill his promise of relief. Bacon and 57 other men went hunting for Indians without a permission from the governor. As they were running low on supplies, they found a friendly Indian fort, which they wanted to get the supplies from. The Indians said they would give it to them. Spoiler alert, they didn't. So Bacon and his men returned home without supplies. On their way home, Bacon's force was attacked. Believing it was the doing of the fort, they returned to the fort and burnt it to the ground, killing 150 Indians with the loss of 3 English. At this point, the governor gave a pardon to any of Bacon's men that would return home, and put a warrant out for Bacon's arrest. Sometime after this, Bacon was arrested, with the officer arresting him saying, "Mr. Bacon, have you forgot to be a gentleman? Get wrecked, Bacon." He was granted a pardon shortly after. Supposedly, this was to help keep the peace since Bacon had a lot of support in the region. Bacon was also readmitted to the House of Burgess, which is an elected assembly. After pardoning Bacon, they wanted to come up with a plan to solve this Indian crisis, although some people thought it'd be a good time to air out their grievances. A long discussion was held after. They ticked off an Indian lady, and that was the end of that. Some days later, a weirdo comes down a street yelling that Bacon had fled the city, of which the governor seemed pretty annoyed. Now, the people on the countryside threatened to repay the government if anything else were to happen to Bacon or his men. Apparently, after this, things started to calm down. And you know what this means. Let's kidnap Bacon! Sounds like a great idea. The government sent out a private warrant for Nathaniel Bacon. The governor got a force of about 400 men to capture Bacon. They traveled about 30 miles northward to a town where Bacon was last known to be. Once they arrived, they started to disarm the town. So they don't fight back. Then the governor and Bacon had a little discussion about Bacon's commission, which apparently included the governor asking to be shot.
Break me down with all of your hatred, and your journey towards the dark side will be complete.
Apparently, there was almost a massacre, but it seemed to have gotten settled. Well, after this, the governor gave command of an army to Nathaniel Bacon. This was only because Berkeley's power was in shambles at this point. A new cousin is to control Berkeley. He was assigned to this position to help deal with the Indian threat. Later on, after having asked the governor for another commission and not receiving it, he marched 1,000 men seeking for Indians. The governor raised 1,200 men from 2 counties to suppress the rebellion from Nathaniel Bacon. Bacon, hearing of this, sent out scouts to different counties. The governor sent out more men, this time by boat, to travel 40 miles up the Potomac River. Bacon would eventually create the Declaration of the People on July 30th, 1676, which called for the government to create a new
council
and that all men should join him under the pain of death. Totally a great way to gather troops. Anyway, On September 19th, 1676, Bacon traveled to Jamestowne and seized the entire city. The governor fled the city. Bacon's force, after resting for a few days, proceeded to burn the entire town to the ground. Although he did save some important documents. Good on him. Some revolts had occurred in Maryland over heavy taxes. Sounds familiar. The leader of those rebellions were put to death. Bacon, hearing of this, sent a ship carrying 20 guns, which was sent to deal with any ship that was raised by the governor. The captain of the ship that Bacon sent, this being Captain Carver, was sent a letter from the governor of Virginia stating that he would be pardoned if he were to switch sides and abandon Bacon's army. He refused this deal and continued to sail up the Otomac River, where he encountered a ship which he attempted to board and seize. Well, he failed to do that, and was captured, and eventually hanged. Bacon would eventually die due to blood lice on October 26, 1676. Now, who would take over for Nathaniel Bacon? Well, it was his lieutenant, Ingram. They would approach the governor and ask for pardons, which some were granted and some were hanged. How nice! This pretty much ends Bacon's rebellion. Bacon is dead, the governor is back, everything is fine. Surely.